How has okay, shall we go ahead and get started then? Okay, so welcome everyone to our presentation on this fine Wednesday evening. We will be talking about mastering the UC personal insight questions, the PIQs. So I am Ms. Lee, I will be presenting, but I am also joined by Ms. T and Ms. Maksudian if they would want to introduce themselves real quick.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Miss T. I work at Hoover High School. I'm the college advisor there.
Hi, everyone. I am Ms. Maksudian, and I am a school counselor at the Online College and Career Academy.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm the college advisor at Glenville High School. Yeah. Okay. So the PIQs. This is probably the one part of the UC app that students, I would hope, are spending the most time on, right? Because you're writing, right? We want you to share your story. So hopefully this presentation will kind of give you the groundwork for like how you begin, or if you've already started, hopefully you've started. It'll help you edit it and like make it as best as it can be. So, okay, there you go. So let's talk about the aim of the PIQs. So there's three main things, right? It's to gain clarity, to give context, and to provide depth. So for clarity, right, you want to allow the readers to gain a richer perspective of your life, experiences, and or any accomplishments that you may have had. And for context, right, you're giving the reader an opportunity to share details about your home, school, or community, right? So obviously during high school, right, you have these experiences, right? And like, where are these experiences taking place, right? So you want to give them the context or the background for where your experiences are happening. And then of course the depth, and that's just about giving more additional details, right? So you want to give them more information on your academics or extracurricular activities, right? Your PIQ should be enhancing the information that you have in other parts of your application, right? So like the transcripts, right? You're inputting grades, right? So like high school coursework, college coursework, and then once you get to your extracurriculars, activities, clubs, right? All that stuff, the reader will already know about you by the time they get to your PIQs, right? So the PIQ should really be about giving them that extra little information or enhancing the information that you already have. Oh, and I didn't mention this, but if you have any questions, please just drop in the chat, yeah, and then we'll go ahead and get to them. Okay, so PIQ Basics. There are 8 questions and you are going to have to pick 4, right? And for each question, it is a 350 word per response, right? So it's 350 words max. The UC admissions typically recommend 250 to 350 words, right? That would be like a good range. And what was I going to say about that? Yeah, so 350 words, it tends to be about 17 to 24 sentences. So like in my head, it sounds like kind of long, right? Like that's like, oh, like that's kind of an essay, but it's actually really short, right? So once you start actually writing and sharing your experiences, right? And like kind of reflecting on those experiences, you'll realize that 350 comes up pretty quick. So that's just something to keep in mind. And all questions have equal value, right? There's no advantage to answering one question over another. There's no significance to the way these questions are ordered. So you would just want to pick the 4 that you might pick the 4 that you can write the most about, right? Or that you have an experience that aligns with what the question is asking. And probably a really important thing, right, is view your PIQs as your personal interview on paper, right? So like what I've been doing with students, right, is I kind of sit across from them, right, and then I'll ask them one of the questions, right? So can you guys see like the questions here? So then if I like sat across from you and asked like, describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, help resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over, oh wait.
Mr. Lee, sorry, we're not on the same page as you.
Right. Okay, sorry. I realized, okay. Let me share. This one, can you guys see it now?
It's still on the PIQ Basics page.
Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, well, I'm just going to read out the question. Okay, so question 1 for the PIQ, right? It's describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time, right? So if myself or Miss T, we sat across from you and you asked that question, right? How would you respond? You would keep it like really short and sweet, right? You would just answer the question very straightforward. So yeah, that's how you would want to approach the questions. And as I mentioned, right, the PIQ topics, there are 8 questions and you're going to pick 4. So these questions, or these are kind of like the main topics that each question touches upon, right? So it's the first one is leadership experience, second, creative expression, third, talent or skill, fourth, personal educational opportunity or barrier, fifth, overcoming a significant challenge, sixth, favorite academic subject, seventh, school/community involvement, and eight, one more thing. So I really want to try to, oh my goodness, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen because I want to go over. Okay, can you see this one now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So I just want to go through some of the questions, right? So it's really important that you read the question super carefully, right? So the first one, right, describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, help resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time, right? You're not answering all three, right? You don't have to answer in which you've positively influenced others, help resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. You can answer just one of them, right? So describe an example of your leadership experience and then expand upon one of these, right? Whichever one your experience would fall into. And then there was another one. So like the third question, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? Right. So if I'm a reader and I'm looking at your essay, if you decided to write about this question, there are four things that I'm looking for, right? So the first thing is, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill, right? And then you would want to touch upon that, right? So that would be like one check mark. And then the second one would be, how have you developed that talent, right? So I want to see progression. I want to see growth, right? I want to see what you did in order to grow this talent or skill. And then the third thing, would be demonstrated that talent, right? So were you able to like share this talent with others, right? Was there like a tangible experience that you were able to engage in where you showed that talent or skill, right? And then the last part is over time, right? So throughout your 4 years of high school, right? How did it develop and how did you develop and demonstrate those? So they want to see that progression. Okay. And then, that kind of makes sense, sort of, yes. Okay, so picking your topics. You want to keep it focused on you, right? Use I statements and my statements, right? Focus on yourself, what you learned, how you grew, etc., right? Be specific about the role you play and what your responsibilities are. And be yourself, right? Do not write what you think the UCs want to hear. Just tell us about yourself. Okay, this is a super big one. I have a lot of students that come to me and be like, oh, like I want to write it in a way that would make me look good for like the UCs, right? But please do not do that, okay? Just write, if anything, just write for yourself, right? Like I've been telling students, treat this as like a journal entry, right? It's kind of like a weird way to think about that, but you can just like write for yourself, right? And then, yeah, right, they want to admit people that they believe and show them who you really are. And then, of course, don't be campus specific, right? All campuses will receive the same copy of your responses, right? It's one application and it's going to all the different schools you applied to. So yeah, please do not say things like UCLA is my dream school.
Mr. Lee, sorry, can I add something about the slide before? Thank you.
Please,
So
yeah.
I've been reading a lot of PIQs where students talk about like an educational opportunity that they took upon with other students or peers from the same school. Then it comes to a point in the PIQ where they want to demonstrate what they learned from that educational opportunity. And instead of saying, I learned, they say we learned, or that was our biggest takeaway. So again, you really want to like eliminate that, avoid using our statements or just plural. You want to keep it singular to yourself. So what was your takeaway? You can only speak about your experience here. So always like find those little nitty gritty times that you do kind of generalize and really focus it on it yourself. Just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. T. That is a super helpful tip. I've been noticing that in like some of the PIQs that I read as well. Thank you. Okay. So then put it all down, right? What information do you need / would want to share? Is there something that you want the admissions readers to know about you, your life, your experiences, etc., right? It has to be on the application somewhere. Don't assume they know things about your circumstances, tell them. So with this, right, keep in mind that by the time they're getting to the PIQs, right, it's like the last portion of the application, right? So by that time, they would have already seen all your personal information, your transcripts, right? So like the grades that you've gotten, right? College courses, high school coursework, extracurriculars and clubs, right? So by the time they get to the PIQ, right, they need new information, right? Or it's either new information or you have to enhance information that is already present in other aspects of your application, right? So strong PIQs have the reader walking away thinking, wow, I learned a lot about that student, right? So it's a little bit invasive, but you kind of want to bring them into your head, right? So that this is why it's super important to like reflect on those experiences, right? Think about kind of how you felt in that moment, what you took away, right? So yeah, if you can, just like bring them into your head, right? So let's go ahead and talk about, right? Okay, so things to avoid. Acronyms, right? If you're talking about clubs, schools, etc., make it easier for readers and spell it out, right? So for motivating matadors, right? And then creative writing, right? Don't write poems or haikus. Answer the questions as if you were asked it in a job interview, right? We said that before. And then storytelling, right? You don't need to spend time setting the scene or telling a story. Be concise and stick to what answers the question. You probably heard me or Miss T say like, tell, don't show, right? That's a really important thing. So just tell them, right? You can be very explicit in what you're trying to say, right? There's no need to be so like creative and use a lot of metaphors and like try to be like ambiguous, right? Just tell them straight up, right? Very straightforward, very simple. And then name dropping. If you know someone who works at the school or admire a specific professor, leave that out of your PIQs, right? This is personal. It's about you. And things to avoid part 2, right? Titles. You don't need to restate the prompt or create a title for your responses, right? As we said before, just get straight into it. Jokes or sarcasm, right? Keep it professional, right? Do not use slang abbreviations, right? But you also want to keep it personal, right? So just like show who you are, right? You can always hook a reader without being telling a joke or trying to be funny, right? And then of course, flowery language. So keep your writing clear and concise. Use your regular vocabulary. SAT words are not necessary. I feel like a lot of students try to use like the big words, right? It is not necessary, right? Like they're not English teachers. They're not going to grade you on like your syntax or like your like word choice, okay? And that kind of ties into the last part, right? So essay structure. Think of these as an interview question, right? So you're not evaluated on essay structure or conventions, right? Obviously, right, like if you can, like make sure like your grammar is like good, but it doesn't have to be like perfect, right? You're not not writing an essay for your English class. And this last slide is more so just reiterating what we've covered, right? So like the details, it's super important that you're giving information that answers the 6 W's about the student and their experiences, right? So like the who, the what, the where, why, the how and when. So I guess 5 W's and 1 H. Well, and then sort of once you give the details, right, the context of what you're talking about, the experience, right, you want to reflect on that experience, okay? So what is the significance of the details, right? Why did you share these details? So in some cases, right, you want to answer the so what, right? So you've told us all about this experience, right? So what? What did you gain from the experience that helps inform the reader about who you are as an individual, right? So things to keep in mind. Be yourself, right? Usually readers actually do want to know about you, your story, and your life. Be genuine, vulnerable, and honest on your application, right? Write multiple drafts. I recommend drafting your questions on a Word or Google Doc, right? And ask for feedback to catch areas of improvement. As of today, right? Today is November 10th. So you have exactly 20 days to submit your UC application, right? So writing multiple drafts, if you can, try to finish writing them by within the next 2 weeks, right? So then those last 6 days, you can use just editing and making sure that they're good and they're answering the question. And kind of the last thing, right? When you're asking for feedback from various people, right? Try not to ask that many people. Because I think what happens with some students is they'll ask like one person and then they'll give them their advice and then they'll ask another person. And then by that time, it's no longer like the student's essay, right? It's a combination of a bunch of different people, right? So then if you're gonna ask someone, just ask them to just ask if your PIQ answers the question, right? And that's something that you can ask them. And then brag a little. So don't downplay your accomplishments, involvements, or intellect, right? So focus on yourself and your unique perspective. You have like 16, 17, or like 18 years of experience, right? So you probably have a lot to share. And yeah, just don't be afraid to flex a little bit. So, okay, a note, right? So as I've said before, it is not an essay, right? Structure is not graded. One thing to keep in mind is when you copy and paste your PIQ from like Google Doc or Word into the application, right, it's going to take away all like any special formatting or special characters. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And make the examples relevant to you today. Right, so bring the reader forward to explain who you are in high school, right? So the PIQs, you really want to keep them focused and centered in on your 4 years of high school, right? 9th through 12th grade. If you do mention something from when you were younger or like middle school, right, you want to keep it very brief. Because it's not like they don't need to know about what happened during middle school, right? That's just like background information. It's like fluff. And of course, right, what about COVID, right? That's something that has impacted all of us. So just be careful if you choose to discuss it, right? If you have been personally and considerably affected by this, feel free to include it on your application sparingly, right? If you're going to write about COVID, talk about how it affected you personally, right? So what changed in your life because of COVID, and how did it affect you either moving forward or in your like communities and so forth, right? But also you can always utilize the additional comment section instead of a PIQ, right? So the additional comment section comes, I believe it's like after you fill out all your PIQs, it should be like one of the final like tabs that you can click and add some stuff. But yeah, if you want to talk about how COVID has affected you, right, you can definitely include it in the additional comments. Okay, yeah, and the additional comments, right, use this space to tell anything else you want the readers to know about, right? It can be academic or non-academic, right? Do not continue one of your PIQs. It is super important, right? That's what, like, they give you the 350 words because it has to be very clear and concise. So do not expand on one of your PIQs. So just here are 2 examples of what you can maybe put into additional comments, right? So my high school only taught 2 AP classes this year, limiting enrollment due to staffing. I did not take APUSH as I originally planned to. Okay, so that gives the admissions person context to why when they look at your transcript, right, okay, this student didn't take APUSH, like what happened, right? And when they get to this part, they'll be like, oh, okay, there was limiting enrollment due to staffing, right? Or the second one, I did not continue in academic decathlon my junior year because our coach left mid-semester and my school did not find a replacement in time for a county competition, right? And these are all things that the admissions rep may not know, right, if you don't include it in this section. So that's about it. I mean, here's our contact info, right? Miss T, myself, Miss Lee, and Miss Maksudian, right? Yeah, honestly, like, just keep writing. I feel like, I remember when I was a senior in high school, I felt like, oh my God, what is Nemo's dad's name? Marlon, wait, right? Marlon, okay, yeah. I feel like I had that exact same face, right? Because like my parents, my counselors, right? Everyone would just tell me to just keep writing, right? Like do this. And it just gets so tiring, right? You hate hearing the same thing over, or at least I did, right? So then it's just super easy to burn out. But I promise you were almost there. I mean, think of how fast first semester is like coming, right? So I think we only have like 4 more weeks left of first semester, right? And then you only have 1 more semester left of high school, right? So it's coming quick, but we are with you every step of the way. Okay, so please do not hesitate to ask us any questions. Okay, we are more than happy to help you. But I believe, yeah, that's about it. So that went a lot. Okay, yeah, so that was about 20 minutes. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, please pop them in the chat right now, and we will be happy to ask you anything. Or no, we will be happy to answer your questions. Yeah, writing is hard, guys. I know.
Yeah, the presentation will be posted on the college and career portion of the Glendale Unified School District website.
Not the presentation itself, but the recording will.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions pertaining to like specific questions of the PIQs? Not sure like how to address it, what to talk about?
Has everyone in here started? At least like, you know which questions you're gonna write.
You guys can like emoji.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You too.